Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're digging into a real Hollywood mystery. How does a movie that critics absolutely hated, called one of the worst of the year, end up becoming a massive box office hit? Yep, we're talking all about Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Okay, so let's just get right to the heart of this thing. Take a look at these Rotten Tomato scores. On one side, you've got the professional critics, who gave it a dismal 16%. Ouch. But then you look at the audience score, an 84%. That is a staggering difference. It's not just a little disagreement, it's a canyon. It really makes you wonder, were these two groups even watching the same movie?
And you better believe that 84% from the audience translated into cold, hard cash. Forget the bad reviews from critics. The movie went on to pull in almost $240 million worldwide. That number right there tells you everything you need to know. When it came to the bank, the audience's opinion was the only one that mattered. Period.
And check this out, because this chart really drives the point home. The movie was made for about $50 million. Now that's actually pretty lean for a big franchise film these days. And what did it do? It made back almost 5 times its budget. You don't have to be a studio executive to know that from a business perspective, that is an absolute, undeniable home run.
So yeah, a total box office paradox. A critical dud that's a commercial smash. The big question is, how on earth did this happen?
All right, to really get why everyone was so divided, we've got to peek inside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza ourselves. Let's take a quick look at what the story is actually all about.
Okay, so the movie just jumps right back into the deep end of the lore, right? It picks up a year after the first film, and it introduces this new, really creepy animatronic, the Marionette, who's possessed by the ghost of a murdered child. So right from the get-go, you know this isn't your typical slasher flick. No, it's plugging into this massive, complicated backstory that fans have been obsessing over for years, through the games, the books, you name it.
And this timeline here, it just gives you a little taste of how complex we're talking. The film kicks off with a super important event way back in 1982, the murder that really sets everything in motion. But the main story, that's happening 2 decades later in 2002. See, for the hardcore fans, every single one of these dates is a piece of a giant puzzle. But for a casual moviegoer, it probably feels like you just walked into the final exam for a class you didn't even know you were taking.
Okay, so now that we know how dense the story is, let's get back to that huge divide. What exactly were the critics and the fan scene that was so different?
You know, it's funny. Rotten Tomatoes itself kind of sums up the whole fight perfectly. The critics' consensus basically calls it a clunky, broken-down machine. But the audience? They're all about the scream-inducing scares. And here's the phrase you really got to latch onto. On the audience side, it says, a satisfying helping of fan service. Remember that phrase. That is the key to this whole thing.
And I'm not exaggerating when I say critics hated this movie. They didn't just dislike it, they absolutely savaged it. The Associated Press called it an incoherent mess. Another outlet straight up said it might be the worst film of the year. For them, all that deep, complicated lore wasn't a cool feature, it was a bug. It just made the whole thing a confusing mess.
But meanwhile, the audience is over here having a totally different conversation. And this one review from a user named Haley just says it all. Fun movie for the fans. That's it. That's the whole review. See, for them, this was never about winning an Oscar. It was about one thing and one thing only, giving the fans exactly what they came for.
This table really breaks it all down, side by side. It's like they're describing 2 different movies. When critics said it was lost in its own lore, audiences saw a richer atmosphere. When critics called the scares laughably cheesy, audiences found them scream-inducing. And here it is again, the big one. What critics slammed as a reliance on fan service was the very thing the audience celebrated as the film's absolute best quality.
And that right there brings us to the movie's secret weapon. Because this huge disconnect we're talking about, it wasn't an accident. It was the whole plan. And that plan was built entirely on one thing: the power of fan service.
I love this quote here because it just hits the nail on the head. These movies do not need to be good to succeed, they just need to feel like FNAF.
That's it.
It didn't have to be a good movie by the old rules. It didn't need a single positive review. All it had to do was feel right to the people who've been invested in this universe for years. That was the only test it had to pass.
So what even is fan service, really? Well, it's pretty simple. It's when the creators intentionally pack a movie with stuff that only the hardcore fans will get. We're talking inside jokes, obscure character appearances, little references to the deepest parts of the lore. It's basically a love letter to the most dedicated fans, rewarding them for their loyalty.
And believe me, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 went all in. They threw in animatronics that you'd only know if you played the second game. They took memes and jokes from the online community and put them right into the movie. They even cast Skeet Ulrich to act with Matthew Lillard, which is a total wink and a nod to fans of the movie Scream. Every single choice like this was a message. This movie is for us, the fans, not for everyone else.
So where does this leave us? Well, this whole thing raises a really big, really interesting question about what it means to make a successful movie today, especially when you're dealing with a huge established fan base. So, is this the new blueprint for success? Can other franchises just copy this formula? I mean, the steps seem pretty straightforward, right? Step 1, find a giant, passionate fan base. Step 2, make something that feels totally authentic to them. Step 3, load it up with fan service to reward them. And Step 4, just ignore the critics and focus only on making the fans happy.
So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway from all this. In our world of huge online communities and fandoms, the power is really starting to shift. Sure, getting good reviews is nice, but what FNAF 2 proves is that if you have a powerful, direct line to a loyal audience, you can make a movie that is, well, virtually critic-proof. And that leaves us with one last, big question to think about. When a movie is made by the fans, for the fans, does a professional critic's opinion even matter anymore? Are they still relevant in that conversation? Or has the power shifted for good? That's not just a question for us, it's something all of Hollywood is trying to figure out right now.